The Clinton Ridge Penitentiary had been closed for nearly 25 years. Its crumbling walls sat deep in the forests of northern Pennsylvania, fenced off and forgotten, a place swallowed by time. But on a freezing January morning, a group of urban explorers stumbled upon something no one was supposed to find. They'd broken through the rusted main gate, cameras rolling for their YouTube channel. The footage began like countless other abandoned place videos, laughter echoing through dark corridors, graffiti covering walls once lined with inmates' names, until one of them, Tyler Ross, noticed something strange, a faint humming sound. It wasn't wind, it wasn't pipes, it was steady, mechanical, coming from the lower east wing, a section that had been sealed off since the late 90s. They followed the sound down a narrow hallway littered with collapsed ceiling tiles and frost-covered chains. Tyler's camera caught the moment they reached the heavy, iron-barred cell, Cell 12E. Unlike the others, its door was locked from the outside, and a flickering light burned overhead. "Who's paying the power bill here?" one of them joked nervously. Then they heard it. A voice, low, raspy, like someone who hadn't spoken in years. "Don't open it." Tyler froze. He replayed the clip later, thinking maybe it was an echo or interference. But no, the voice was real, and it came from inside the locked cell. Within hours, local police swarmed the site. The explorers were questioned, their footage confiscated. By evening, the Pennsylvania Bureau of Investigations was on scene. Chief Investigator Ellen Harker led the operation, a 30-year veteran known for uncovering long-buried secrets. The cell door was old but intact. The locking mechanism rusted shut. When they finally pried it open, the stench was unbearable, a mix of decay and mold. Inside was a makeshift cot, empty food cans, and a single oil lamp still burning low. But what chilled everyone wasn't the smell. It was the wall. Written in charcoal, line after line, were dates, hundreds of them. The most recent one, December 29th, 2024, just 6 days before the explorers entered. No body, no footprints, no forced entry. Just that humming noise, now gone. The prison's blueprint showed that the power grid for the East Wing had been shut down in 2001. No explanation existed for the live current feeding that single bulb. Detectives swept the area for fingerprints. None matched anyone in the system. And then, something else surfaced. A file buried deep in the county archives, stamped confidential. It contained one name, inmate number 4072. Marcus Vale, sentenced to life in 1997 for double homicide, declared deceased in custody in 2003. But if that was true, who had been living inside Cell 12E? And why had someone made sure it stayed locked from the outside? Because when investigators checked the original death records, Marcus Vale's body was never found. When Chief Investigator Ellen Harker opened the Marcus Vale file, the first thing she noticed was the signature. It wasn't the warden's. It wasn't medical staff either. The document declaring Vale deceased in custody had been signed by someone who didn't exist, Dr. Raymond Kale, a coroner who never appeared in state employment records. The second thing that didn't add up was there was no record of a body transfer. Every inmate death required one, but the chain of custody was blank. Vale's cause of death was listed as heart failure during solitary confinement. Case closed. Cremation ordered. Except there was no cremation certificate, no ashes logged, and no next of kin contact. It was as if the man had vanished on paper and in reality. Harker ordered a search of the prison archives. Deep in the storage basement, behind decades of dust and forgotten case boxes, they found an unlabeled VHS tape, sealed in an evidence envelope. The timestamp read, May 14th, 2003, the date of Vale's supposed death. The footage was grainy, monochrome, the kind used for inmate monitoring. At first, it showed a narrow cell, bare, cold, standard solitary unit. Then Vale appeared. Tall, thin, haunted eyes that never blinked long enough. He sat on the cot, rocking slightly. His lips moved constantly, like he was whispering to someone. The guard logs confirmed no visitors, no sound from other inmates, no medical staff assigned that night. But then, halfway through the footage, Vale stood. He walked to the camera, leaned close until his face filled the frame, and whispered, "They said I'd never leave, but I already have." And then, the screen cut to static. No one ever recorded after that moment. Harker paused the tape, her pulse hammering. She rewound it frame by frame. Right before the static, in the corner of the image, a faint reflection appeared. Someone standing outside the cell, wearing a guard's uniform, but no one could identify him. Records from that night listed only 3 correctional officers on duty, and all 3 had either retired or died within the last decade. One, however, stood out: Captain Lyle Brenner, the last man to check in at the East Wing before the power failure that shut down the block in 2003.
Harker tracked down Brenner's last known address, a remote cabin 40 miles from the prison. When investigators arrived, they found the place abandoned. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings about Clinton Ridge Penitentiary and dozens of photographs of Cell 12E. Pinned above the fireplace was a hand-scribbled note: "Don't open it again." In a locked drawer nearby, they found Brenner's old prison badge and a cassette recorder. When they pressed play, his voice cracked through the static. Marcus Vale never died in that cell. He just stopped being Marcus. The orders came from higher up. We were told to keep him there, off the books, until he talked. But he didn't talk. He waited. And now, he's out. The tape ended with the sound of a door creaking shut. Harker sat in silence, the words looping in her mind. She ordered a forensic sweep of the abandoned cabin. Beneath the floorboards, crime scene techs found something wrapped in plastic: a tattered prison uniform tagged with Vale's inmate number, and a fresh bloodstain still visible on the collar. DNA analysis came back 24 hours later. It was a match, not for Marcus Vale, but for Captain Lyle Brenner. After the DNA results came back, Chief Investigator Ellen Harker knew the story had crossed from strange to impossible. The blood found at Captain Brenner's cabin didn't belong to the inmate who'd supposedly died decades ago. It belonged to the man who had kept him locked away. But Brenner himself was missing, presumed dead. The team's next move was to re-examine every piece of evidence from the old prison. The more they dug, the more contradictions surfaced. Maintenance logs from the early 2000s showed that the East Wing, where Cell 12E was located, had been restricted to government contract personnel. No official documentation identified who those personnel were. Then, a retired electrician named Frank Danner came forward after seeing the story on local news. He told Harker that back in 2002, he'd been paid in cash to keep one circuit of the East Wing active, just one. When he asked why, he was told, "Don't worry about it, it's for testing." Testing what? Nobody knew. Danner gave them an old service invoice that included a handwritten note: "Power feed 12E only, maintain indefinitely." It was the same line that kept that flickering bulb alive for 23 years. By the second week of the investigation, Harker and her team secured a search warrant to re-enter Clinton Ridge. They brought in full forensic gear, drones, and backup. The media wasn't told. No one wanted another viral spectacle, not after what the explorers had unleashed online.
Inside, the prison was colder than before. The air itself seemed to vibrate. Every footstep echoed like it belonged to someone else. When they reached Cell 12E, something was different. The cot was gone. The walls had been scrubbed clean, the charcoal date marks erased. But on the far wall, written freshly in red marker, were 4 words: "He never left here." The power line feeding the light bulb had been severed, yet the lamp still glowed. Harker ordered a sweep of the underground tunnels that once connected solitary confinement to the old boiler room. 2 officers followed the narrow passage and radioed back that they'd found another door, rusted, bolted, and unmarked. It wasn't on any of the prison's blueprints. They cut it open. Inside was a small chamber, concrete floor, a metal chair, and chains bolted to the walls. A plastic folder lay on the chair. Inside were hundreds of Polaroid photos of Marcus Vale, dated between 2003 and 2018. Each photo showed him thinner, older, but undeniably alive. The last photo was dated December 29, 2024, the same date scrawled on the cell wall. In that image, Vale was no longer in the cell. He was standing in front of the camera, outside, daylight behind him. And in the corner of the frame, blurred, almost unnoticeable, was Chief Investigator Ellen Harker's car. She froze. The team verified the plate number. It was hers. That photo was taken the week before the explorers entered the prison. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of electricity, the same tone the explorers had heard in their video. Then, the radio crackled. A guard outside shouted that the front gate had just swung open on its own. Harker and her team raced back to the main yard, flashlights slicing through the fog. The gate stood wide, chains dangling. In the snow beyond the fence, a trail of footprints led into the forest. Fresh, heavy steps from boots that hadn't seen daylight in years. They followed the tracks for nearly a half-mile until they vanished at the edge of a frozen creek. What they found instead stopped them cold. An old identification badge half buried in the ice. Captain Lyle Brenner's, smeared with fresh blood. The official report labeled it unresolved. Subject remains at large. The prison was sealed again, this time permanently. But locals still claim that on some nights, a faint light flickers through the barred window of cell 12E, and if you listen closely, over the wind, you can hear a voice whisper, "They said I'd never leave." If you thought this story was chilling, wait until you hear what was discovered in the warden's office 3 months later. Subscribe, because the next case might be even darker.